Hello, everyone. This is your loving host and best selling author, radio, and TV personality, Dr. Afshan Hashmi, live from her studio in Rockville, Maryland. And today I got a very interesting video, and it says about American hairdressers and American roots, hairdressers and beauty and shop culture in America. So I thought I will go live and I will present this video. And this is the courtesy of Library of Congress. And here it is. I have my two books. The first one is The Modern Mughal Mentality: New Strategies to Succeed in India and the Global Marketplace. And when this book came in 20, when this book came, this one, the Modern Mughal Mentality, the first one, it was Amazon bestseller and hot number one new release on Amazon. And the second one is The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection. Both were Amazon bestsellers in USA, and this one was Amazon bestseller in India, and this was also Amazon bestseller, Amazon hot number one new release in India. And I want a documentary to be made out of it, and also I want a movie or a documentary made out of it, and this one I want a movie or a web series made out of it. And Tailflix has given a very good evaluation of this outbreak of a monstrous infection, so please go and look for it in your please go and look for this Tailflix evaluation on my website www.afshanhashmi.com. And this one is the Modern Mughal Mentality: New Strategies to Succeed in India and the Global Marketplace. And many American companies and companies around the globe are featured here. So all those companies, for example, McDonald, Pizza Hut, they can give me a sponsorship to make this part of a documentary of this. Having said that, folks, I would go and talk about the American hairdressers, so let's start the movie. So let's play the movie here.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hello, everyone. My name is Betsy Peterson, and I'm the director of the American Folklife Center here at the Library of Congress. And on behalf of all of the staff, I want to welcome you here today. This is the latest presentation in our Benjamin Botkin Lecture Series, which allows us to highlight the very best scholarship in the fields of folklore, oral history, ethnomusicology, and cultural heritage and studies. It also allows us to enhance our collections here at the American Folklife Center. We tape record every lecture in the series, and it will make its way up to our website, where it will become available to people around the world and for generations to come. It also enhances our acquisitions and collections. So with that said, please turn off your cell phones if you have not already. Um, Today, I have a great honor to introduce the award-winning author, photographer, and former Library of Congress Archie Green Fellow, Candacy Taylor, who has come all the way from Los Angeles for this lecture today. Candacy's work has been featured in a variety of places, the New Yorker, the Los Angeles Times, USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, San Francisco Chronicle, Ms. Magazine, and so many others. Her previous study, Counterculture, The American Coffee Shop Waitress, resulted in a well-received book published by Cornell University Press and an exhibit as well, which among other honors was touted by Southwest Airlines as one of the, in their top 10 list of things to see in the United States. Not bad. Candacy owns and directs Tailor Made Culture, which is a company that produces multimedia projects examining American culture of all kinds. And she currently lives in Los Angeles. And I should just add, Tailor Made Culture is also a website, and it's a great place to visit, and I encourage you to do so. Today, the topic of Ms. Taylor's talk is American Roots, Hairdressers, and Beauty Shop Culture in America, which was actually the focus of her Archie Green Fellowship. And for this research, Candacy traveled over 20,000 miles throughout the United States, interviewing hairstylists and clienteles, including members of the African American, Appalachian, Cajun, Dominican, Gullah, Jamaican, Japanese, Orthodox Jewish, Lumbee Indian, Pakistani, and LGBT communities. We all may think sometimes that hair is a frivolous or individual expression of beauty and vanity, but it is far from that and so much more. And as Candacy will be talking about today, hairdressing traditions, styling practices, and the accompanying conversations and discourses that go with it in that intimate space of the salon are a lot more and tell us a lot more about who we are and reflect much about contemporary American belief systems regarding race, class, and cultural production. So with all of that said, please let me welcome Candacy Taylor, and please give her a warm welcome. Candacy.
Hello, and thank you so much for coming. This is a tremendous honor to be here. I'd love to thank Nancy Gross for really making this happen. And Betsy, it was just such a beautiful introduction. I appreciate that. And the American Folklife Center for supporting this project with an Archie Green Fellowship. This grant was so critical. It really allowed me to complete the field research for the project and to archive this work at the Library of Congress. This is a multidisciplinary project, and it combines ethnography, documentary photography, oral history, and I set out to untangle the story of Americans and their hair and explore the role that hair plays in creating our cultural identity. Eventually, I would like to write a book and tour an exhibit, kind of like counterculture, throughout the US. So really, the story starts with me. When I was 6 years old, my earliest memories are in the 1970s, getting my hair pressed every weekend, sitting at the kitchen table. And it was a little traumatic, having like a 400-degree hot comb grazing my scalp and being fearful that I was going to get burn marks on my ears. And my mother would just say, sit still. And it was very serious. And I remember feeling, scared, but then soon after it was done, I could swing my hair from side to side. And I thought it was like that woman in the Breck commercial. I think that was popular at the time. And it was like magic. It was like magic. It would never do this in its natural state. This is my natural hair. And after watching my cousins and other Black friends go through the same ordeal, I got the message that we were different somehow. And, my mom raised us to believe that to try and be colorblind and believe that there was no difference. But it was undeniable. You know, my white and Latino friends just didn't worry about getting their hair wet, and they didn't have burn marks on their ears, and they didn't smell like ultra sheen hair grease. And I remember it was the very first time I felt different because of my race. So in my 30s, I was getting my hair done at Gigi's salon. I had been going there for about 10 years. And one day I realized I had never seen anyone of a different race walk through the door other than Black women. And her shop was in San Francisco. So this was surprising because San Francisco is such a racially, one of the most diverse places in the world. And in every other area of my life, I had different kinds of people around me. And I thought, this is so strange that in this one space, it's all Black. And one day, a white woman walked in, and it was shocking. It's like, oh my gosh. And she wanted to get her hair done. She just wanted a wash and set, which is very simple. And Gigi turned her away. And after the woman left, she said, I don't do white hair. And I thought, I was stunned. I thought, oh my God, you know, I felt uncomfortable being in a place that didn't serve white people. I thought, oh my, you know, am I part of some secretist society that I didn't know about? Or it just felt very, it was shocking to me that this happened. And in my heart, I knew Gigi wasn't racist. So that's when I really started studying the salon. I would sit under the hairdryer and just watch and look at the interactions that were happening there. And I realized that Gigi, in her way and in her mind, was somehow protecting this environment. You know, it is a very intimate space, and it's rooted in culture, ethnicity, religion, and ritual. And it didn't make it right that she turned her away, but I understood what was happening. I understood why, and it is human nature that we surround ourselves with people who look, think, and act like us. It's just what we do. So I couldn't help but wonder if there were other shops like this, Latino salons, Pakistani, Japanese. So as Betsy mentioned, I traveled over 20,000 miles throughout the US, documenting a variety of cultures, salons that predominantly serve, and she listed them, so I'm not going to relist them again. But I also interviewed industry icons, such as the Vidal Sassoon family, Jean-Paul DeJoria of Paul Mitchell, Tabitha Coffey from Tabitha Takes Over, the Bravo show, and hairdressers who styled Bob Marley, Eartha Kitt, Veronica Lake, Nancy Wilson, and Farrah Fawcett. So getting access into these places was difficult, especially those outside of my race. Only about 1 out of every 8 salons allowed me to really walk in with camera equipment and photograph them. And in the end, you know, I couldn't blame them because, like I said, it's an intimate space. So it wasn't worth the risk of alienating their regular customers. So most of them just said, no, you know, we don't want you in here. And when I couldn't get into the places, I read everything I could get my hands on, all the literature about hair and some about culture and identity. But I believed, you know, it was a very challenging process because I almost abandoned the project twice in the 7 years I've been doing it because I just couldn't get access. But I believe that, you know, there was insider information that these stylists had about what was happening. And it was a key to capturing something new about this subject because there's a lot written about hair. So what I learned is that race matters, you know, and more specifically, it's about hair texture. It continues to be a factor in the salon business. Second to skin color, hair is our most racially defining feature. Practically every ethnicity has developed a specialized product or procedure to change their hair texture. And as a result, beauty shop culture is a window into contemporary understandings about race, segregation, and integration. So here's an audio clip I'm going to play from Gail Bruno. She's been a hairdresser for over 50 years, and she talks about racial segregation in salon culture.
Back when I was younger, we could not work on any other type of hair. We were licensed differently. We could not do anybody but Caucasian. I don't know why. I think because of the processing. you know, like with straightening and all that. I think that is why we weren't licensed to really do that. And that's weird when you think about it, because now that would never happen.
What year did you go to beauty school approximately?
60 to 61.
And in the salons that you worked at, the two all white women?
All white.
Did
Yeah,
anybody
that's
of
all.
color ever walk in the salon?
Not that I can remember, hon. That is so funny that you said that. That's so long ago. You know, you don't even think of that now. You know, like there's so many different processes compared to what we do. I don't know. I don't think I could. I would have to go back to school. I know I would. That's so funny how that's segregated.
And, you know, I sympathize with hairdressers because they are expected to know how to do anyone's hair. And our hair is so different, you know, especially when it comes to race. And although it's true that, you know, we share more similarities and differences among the races, anatomically, our hair is not the same. So to learn just briefly about the anatomy of hair, one strand of hair has 3 layers. There's an inner medulla, a cortex, and an outer cuticle. And stylists don't like to assign race to different hair types. They don't like to say, oh, that's black hair or Asian hair, because within the races, people can have different textured hair. But generally, there are 3 dominant textures that are found in African, Caucasian, and Asian hair. So here we see that the African hair is flat. It has more of almost a ribbon-like anatomy. And so think if you take a pair of scissors and you take the blade and you know, when you're doing gift wrapping and it coils really tight, that's why African hair can curl so tightly, because it's anatomically set up to do that. Whereas straight hair or Caucasian hair it's round, so it's almost like a rope. So if you took those scissors and tried to do the same thing with a rope, it wouldn't work so well. And if you think about Asian hair that has all those cuticle layers on it, that makes it even straighter, and the light reflects off those cuticle layers, which makes it very shiny. It's very difficult for Asian hair, traditionally Asian hair, to get any curl in it. So I went to Ozuki Salon, which is a Japanese salon in DC here. And to get that soft wave pattern, that beachy look that seems so easy breezy, is very difficult in Asian hair. And I was there for about 5 hours watching this process. There were all these clamps and rollers and rubber bands and a chemical that breaks down the cortex, because that cortex is so much thicker. Quite involved. And the owner of Ozuki says, you know, there's a regular salon wouldn't have these materials or the knowledge to do this. He travels to Japan several times a year to stock his salon with the necessary tools. Also at Ozuki, they have traditional kimono dressing services. They serve green tea with a little Japanese cookie. It's very traditional. Another ethnic shop I visited was Bollywood Beauty Shop in Queens, which is popular among Southeast Asian culture. They play Bollywood movies on television. They carry products for Indian hair, ceremonial bridal makeup services, henna services. Eyebrow threading is really popular all over the country now, but this is traditionally an Indian practice, and they've offered this service for many, many decades. So here's an audio clip of Shahzad Hafiz, and he talks about doing Jennifer Aniston's haircut on Indian hair.
A lot of the fashion among the Southeast Asian clientele comes from Bollywood. And I think Bollywood also is very, very influenced by Hollywood. So Jennifer Aniston's hair, it was a worldwide phenomenon. And everybody wanted Jennifer Aniston's hair, but how it would transform into their hair and their look. I think I've done Jennifer Aniston's version of hair as long as I can remember. It was such a huge phenomenon. The way the layering fell around the face and the shoulders. I did millions of versions of that hair. But an Indian version of that.
What changes would you have to implement to make that work on Indian hair?
Okay. I think Jennifer Aniston being a European or an American or whatever, that hair was created on that medium. Now, Indian hair is very different from, let's say, somebody like Jennifer Aniston's hair. As a hairstylist, you got to bring that, transform that look with a medium which is different from one it was created on, but somehow make it look, maybe if not like that, inspired by that,
So
and
what's
you
the biggest
create some
challenge? Is that I'm assuming that Indian hair is heavier, has
definitely
more.
heavier, it falls different, and somehow the cut has to work for the features also. Now, Indian features are very different from other people. So it has to somehow complement that.
Yeah. You know, the pressure to look like Jennifer Aniston as an Indian woman must be challenging, to say the least. But you know, and I thought, being a black woman, I thought, oh, we have it harder, and you know, because the hair thing is such a big issue. But no one really has it easy. I mean, pretty much it's human nature to want what we don't have. So even for white women, the pressure to be blonde is a real issue, and it comes at a great cost. So here's Steve, an award-winning colorist, talking about the money, time, and effort it takes to be blonde.
My personal opinion, I call blondes who are lifers, I call it blondage, because it is a form of blonde bondage. There's a number of things that have to fall in place to keep somebody blonde, because I will not personally keep somebody blonde if they are not following all the steps. Meaning, if they make the decision to go blonde and they have dark hair naturally, especially, you're going to incur a certain amount of dryness, damage. It's just part and parcel when you make that decision. So there is are you willing to keep up with the maintenance that it requires to keep this blonde going, so that you're not walking around for 3 months with black root blonde hair, because that does not reflect well on me if you're not going to maintain the color. So there is the financial implication, the time implication, that you need to come in every 6 weeks to either have a retouch and highlight or a retouch by itself to keep this going. There's also the home care regimen that blondes cannot skimp on, because if the hair is not kept in good condition, that means the palette that I'm using to put color on won't retain that color, and the color will not look its best. Those are primarily, I think, the 3 or 4 things that, you know, when I have that initial discussion, if you're not that one that's going to do this, or if I at some point see that that person is not keeping up with this, I'm going to suggest strongly that we get to something a little more moderate that fits their time and their pocketbook, because it's the highest maintenance scenario in color, is being dark and wanting to be blonde.
Yeah, and hairdressing, you know, not only requires a great deal of skill, it is extremely labor intensive. You know, stylists contort their hands into all kinds of awkward positions. They inhale toxic fumes, rolling, flat ironing, curling, teasing, blow drying, bending over the shampoo bowl, can injure their backs, hands, shoulders, and wrists. And beyond the physical labor, the technical demands are pretty extensive. I mean, they must understand chemistry, and even a regular haircut requires many steps. So here's Dougie Freeman talking about, he once styled Farrah Fawcett's hair, and he's talking about the steps of doing a haircut.
I think that a lot of young students are not really aware of how difficult it's going to be, or how many skills they have to memorize. For instance, every haircut that I do has as many as 75 steps to it. When I teach these haircuts, I teach them in steps. The student must memorize these steps. Not everyone can memorize 75 steps. This is why it's easy for me to replicate the haircut when they come in the next month, because I know what I did, because I use certain indicators on the face to draw lines. In my consultation, which I do every time, we sit in the chair, we look in the mirror, and I say, what are we going to do today? And at that point, I listen to the client and I start gathering information in my little mind, design a haircut that's going to be flattering for her within the guidelines that she's giving me. This is a blueprint, just like I would design a house if she was asking me to build a house for her. What color would you like the house? What shape? How many porches? These are just the same types of things that an architect does.
Yeah. And, you know, most students don't learn this level of haircutting in cosmetology school, but those who do get adequate training can really make a good living doing hair. And Forbes reports that it's a recession-proof business practically. Clients admit that they put aside their hair money just as they would a utility bill. It's just as critical. It's a non-negotiable necessity, and it makes hairstyling one of the most lucrative jobs, especially those without a college degree. Madam C.J. Walker marketed and sold hair products in the early 1900s and became one of the wealthiest self-made women of any race during that time. And, you know, more than any other race, we're getting into it, the good hair debate, especially among Black women. It's an ongoing struggle. And when Chris Rock's daughters asked him why they don't have quote unquote good hair, he set out to understand about this Black hair dilemma. And many Black women were upset that he exposed a lot of our private hair rituals. You know, but much of America was fascinated. And it did help break down some barriers between whites and Blacks, and it did spark a new dialogue about race. I felt it didn't go far enough in examining how culture intersects with hair and identity. It didn't provide any context for Black women's natural styling hair choices, such as dreadlocks, afros, and braids. And African women have deep, deep roots and troubled history when it comes to hairstyling. During the 1400s, before European slave ships arrived to Africa, hair was very important, and they spent hours or even days on their hair. And when slaves were captured by Europeans, their hair was cut off, and they were given head wraps to prevent the spread of lice. And head wraps signified kind of inferiority to the slave owners, but to the women who wore them, they became a source of personal identity. And the style in which they wore them just differed ever so slightly, and it differed according to the region they lived. And it gave these women a sense of individualism and pride, which must have been critical considering the circumstances that they were under. And stripped from the hairdressing tools that they used in Africa, once their hair grew back, they had to reinvent a way to comb and style and condition their hair. And what they used was what was available on the plantation, which was oftentimes pig's fat, kerosene, and cotton. Those were the most popular items. And one of the more fascinating interviews, if we bring it up to date, is the Bay sisters. They specialize in traditional African hairstyling. And they were trained by the late master braider Yvette Smalls. The Bay sisters were also raised in the MOVE organization, a separatist Black organization that was bombed by the city of Philadelphia. Being a part of the moves really inspired and deeply influenced their relationship to their hair. And here's an audio clip of Folashade Bay talking about this.
Locks and natural hair is actually a political statement. The move, they wore locks. You know, we're actually from an Islamic origin. Normally we would wear our hair covered. My mom, she uncovered her hair. And from then on, she made sure that her children understood that natural hair is important and it is a statement. We went to rallies, we sang and chanted with our mentors, Sister Mama E, Sister Yvette Smalls. We would sing braid it, don't burn it. And we were a part of that. And even though I was young, I didn't fully understand. And now as I come into my older years, I'm very proud of who I am and I'm very comfortable. The government, they did not agree with how the family spoke or how they dealt with living and how they dealt with cultural awareness. The government actually bombed their house with children and the whole family in it. They actually flew over the house and dropped bombs. So my point with mentioning MOVE was that my mom decided, even though we were Muslim and she would wear her hair covered, she removed her hair, her covering, because she wore locks, and she wanted to show that locks is nothing negative. There's nothing dreadful about locks. It's a beautiful thing. It's something to embrace, and it enhances strength within some people.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that happened in 1985, so this wasn't the 60s or the civil rights, movements. And the struggle to wear traditional hairstyles continues today. Just a few weeks ago, there was an article that came out about the Army banning braids, twists, and locks. They're using words such as unkempt and matted, which is offensive and disturbing. They clearly don't understand that the challenge is, what Black women go through to do their hair. And a lot of those hairstyles twists, locks, and braids are among the easiest and least time consuming hairstyles. So there's still a lot of ignorance out there about Black women and their hair. And these restrictions in particular will force Black women to either cut off all their hair to the maximum 2-inch, length, or they will have to chemically straighten it to wear it, quote unquote, neat. The societal pressure for Black women to process their hair is profound, and this was evident when Gabby Douglas was criticized for her hair just moments after winning the gold medal at the Olympics, and every major newspaper covered it. She was practically bullied into getting a Hollywood makeover. And the irony is that most of the critics were Black women. So, Anu Prestonia, she owns Comic Kinks in Brooklyn. This salon specializes in natural hairstyling, and she has some insight about this.
I didn't read any of those tweets, but I did post on my Facebook page about how horrible I think it is, because there's a whole new generation of young women who are discovering their natural hair. They are rather militant about it because they feel like they've been tricked. They came up with perms and being told that their hair wasn't good enough or it wasn't the right texture. And now they've discovered their new hair, and they're extremists. And I think that they are being divisive without realizing it, pitting one sister against another based on her hair choices. That was the frame of reference I was coming from. But then I found out that even people who are into processed hair had problems with her hair because they felt it wasn't coiffed enough. It didn't look refined enough. And I thought, how stupid can you be? Here is this woman on the world stage breaking world records, and you're worried about her hair? You need a life.
What was it,
I think that we still have very deep rooted self esteem problems as a community. And when we see someone on the world stage, we want them to be perfect, especially for white people. They represent us and they should have everything together. They can't have their nails not done perfectly, or, hair out of place, or the makeup not right, and it's because of our lack of self-esteem, I think that comes from. And to me, it has the opposite effect, because now, to me, other people, other cultures are looking at us and saying, look how shallow you are. All you care about is what you have on, what you look like, what your nails look like. No wonder you can't feed your children or get to school, get your children educated properly, because you're putting your focus and your money in the wrong area.
Yeah, and the pressure to straighten hair really isn't just about the freedom to do what you want, but Black hair is fragile, and straightening and chemical straightening and heat processing can easily damage it. So here's Folashade talking about fixing a client's hair that was damaged by straightening it.
The client that I had, Ifama, the relaxer broke her hair off. She said, I'll never get a relaxer again. And she's 14, so she's going through this transition pretty young. She grew her hair out, but then she decided to press it and straighten it. Well, her hair did not agree with the heat either. And so I decided that we are going to transition your hair. We are going to help to strengthen your hair back. I braided her hair and told her, let's not burn it anymore. Let's braid it. Let's heal it. Our concept and within transitioning is we grow an inch and then we trim an inch, so that as her new growth grows in, it's strengthening and we're taking off the hair that is not so healthy. So because what'll happen is it'll break off either way. Where that straight hair meets the new growth of the curly, it's weakened because there are two different textures there. So what I decided to do was braid her hair, and we actually did weave in a little bit of added hair to do the 2-strand twist at the top. But she actually did have a little bit of breakage in the middle. I braided it up and I covered it in a very creative way while we are strengthening and regrowing her hair. It actually took me about 4.5 hours.
And most hairstylists don't have the knowledge or particular skill set to do this. So when I asked her sister Nzinga, how do stylists learn these techniques? What do we do? We have a problem. How do we fix it? And this is what she said.
to me, in my eyes, she does not understand what it is to actually wear her natural hair. And that's what we're here for, to take it to the next level, because it was instilled in us from birth. I am a cosmetologist, a licensed cosmetologist in Pennsylvania. I can see one side and I can see the other side. But, and I say but because the cultural, the natural side is something that I'm born with. It's nothing that someone, actually, I went to school to learn. I went to the school of master braiders. I did not learn about natural hair in school. You can't. I don't believe that you can. Again, we're stating it's a tradition. You cannot learn this in school.
Yeah, which makes it interesting, like I said, because we have a problem. More women of color are embracing their natural hair texture. So, how many of the Bay sisters do we have, doing this? So our society is changing too. 1 in 7 marriages is interracial. The rate of people adopting children of different races continues to rise. It's not only changing how we look, think, act, and see each other. It's literally changing our hair texture. A front page article in the Los Angeles Times said that, stylists are being nudged out of their comfort zone because more people are coming in to the shop with different hair texture, and they're not quite sure how to handle it. Even when you go into multicultural salons in San Francisco, this is Miss Mia getting her hair done. She was fabulous. She's half African and half Brazilian. And this shop is located in Noe Valley, which is an upper middle class, mostly white neighborhood. And there are a lot of white women there who have kids of different races, and they can go to hair play because there's a Latino person there doing hair. There's somebody who's doing African hairstyling. It's really, they're really trying to serve their community. Mia pictured here is not adopted. Her parents, like I said, are African and Brazilian. But this is Dougie Freeman talking about the changes he sees, in the salons.
I have to say that the client is getting curlier and curlier as the years have gone on, because it's all about Mother Africa, and it's all about intermarriage, and it's all about curly hairs getting introduced to our culture, which is just an observation. Certainly in the Boston area, you see a lot of blondes just because of the people that immigrated here and so on and so forth. In New York, you see less blondes, you see more brunettes. I don't really know why, but where I sit in the business, having been doing this for 40 years, I have to say that I'm seeing more curl in the client's hair. I still find that African-American clients seem to gravitate toward African-American salons. I think it's just sort of the way it is. What I make all my money straightening hair and bleaching hair and anglicizing people. The first question I ask people with curly hair is, do you embrace your curly hair? And then we go from there. If people don't embrace their curly hair, they have options. They can have straight hair.
What percentage would you say they don't embrace?
Lately, I would say it's like 50-50. Half the world wants lighter skin, and there are products that are designed for lightening and brightening. In fact, the trend now in skincare, if you're not into tanning, is enlightenment and brightening. The same thing with hair. If you want curly, then you have products. We have so many products now, and I carry 3 different lines that are specifically designed for curly hair. So as far as the client is concerned, you have options. You can control the way you look. And I believe that our hair is really our most important accessory. And I think that it can certainly make or break you.
And, I interviewed a Lumbee Indian mother and daughter team, which was fascinating because the mother grew up with curly hair. And that's unusual. Most people think Native American hair is going to be straight. And she was very deeply, deeply ashamed because her whole family, they had straight hair, and she was the only one with this curly hair. And she straightened it as a child in North Carolina. And this pictured here is her daughter now, who fully embraces her curls and is very excited about it. But, even during that time, they did the notorious pencil test, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it was a practice, especially in Native American culture in the South, where it came from it originated in South Africa, but in the American South, they would put a pencil at the base of the scalp, and if it got stuck and didn't move, it meant that you had African ancestry, and then you were treated as such. And it was, it was very serious. And so these were the conditions that, her mother had experienced. And, today her daughter is kind of more free to wear her hair naturally. And, Dougie mentioned that he sees that, Black women still will gravitate towards Black salons. And in addition to the cultural comforts, the reason for not going to the right hairstylist, especially for Black women, can be really serious. I mean, it can cause hair loss and burning and damage, irreparable damage. And this is why salons are still one of the most racially segregated businesses in America. It's difficult for Black women to trust white people to do their hair. And even Oprah said on national television, "I will not go to a white hairdresser." But I did meet a Sicilian woman, Rena Monarca, who has a primarily Black clientele. And Sicilians have hair as curly as Africans. And so she is familiar with this hair texture. And here's an audio clip of Rena talking about how she convinced Black women that she could do their hair.
Twyla was one of my first Black clients who just happened to walk by. And, she's doing one of those looking past me thing. And I said, "Can I help you?" And she's like, "I'm looking for color," and she's looking past me. And I'm like, "I can do your hair." And she goes, "Well, I don't think so." And I said, "No, really, I can do your hair. I can cut it. I can blow dry it. I'll just blow dry it. If you don't like it, you don't even have to pay me." And she was very upbeat, big smile, wonderful. And she's like, "Okay, I'll come back tomorrow." And she did. She came back the next day. So I cut it, I blew it dry. And upstairs was Etna and all those offices. And, she's up there and she walks in and all her girlfriends went, "What'd you do?" Because it was a drastic change. We shaking her head and she's like, "Look at this." And she sent me all her friends. Then after her, another woman who was beautiful, who eventually married a politician. I mean, she was like the woman to go to, always the right hair, the right, dress and this and that. She went to a party. And that's who really sent me a ton of people because everybody wanted to be like Lynn. And she shook her head and her hair moved and everybody was like, "Oh my God, where did you go?" And so she gave people my name and number. And that's how it all began. And, and people would come in and go, "I'm looking for Rena." And I'd say, "I'm Rena." And one woman goes, "Oh no, I'm going to kill her." And I said, "Don't worry." And she goes, I'm sorry. But she didn't tell me you were white. And I said, "It's okay. I can still do your hair."
And it's funny. I mean, another trend is, the opposite effect. There are so many people of different races who are wearing ethnic hairstyles, and they're attempting to satisfy that demand. For example, a person with straight hair who might want to wear locks, that's a whole process. And they could go to Twisted Salon in New Orleans, where they specialize in transforming hair into dreadlocks. They have developed a contraption that it was really impressive. It was like a vacuum cleaner with a steamer nozzle attached to it from the floor. And you can see the nozzle there where she puts all this product in the hair and then back combs it, in these strands, and then tries to steam it into a shape to train the hair to grow into locks. It is quite a process. Another surprising multicultural salon I found was Shuli Wigs, which was an Orthodox Jewish wig shop in Brooklyn. And they've busted out of the box of religion and created a hugely successful business that supplies wigs for women of all races and religions. I thought I'd be walking into the opposite situation. And no, she found especially Black women in the wig market has just blown up, and she's also tapping that market. So in conclusion, traveling the US and talking to people about hair has been an incredible experience. It seems like our quest, though, to be politically correct and to get along, quote unquote, I think we've boxed ourselves into a corner. many people are afraid to speak their minds about what they're really thinking, because they're afraid they're going to be labeled as being racist. And during the interviews, I encourage people to just move away from those carefully crafted conversations and those platitudes and pleasantries. I asked them to speak honestly about what they really thought about culture and identity, and focusing on something as seemingly innocent as hair really allowed them to do that and disarm their fears about discussing race. And, for example, I interviewed an older Cajun woman in the middle of rural Louisiana, in the middle of nowhere. And at the end of the conversation, towards the end of the day, she said, can I touch your hair? And she was really nervous, I could tell. And even though we'd spent the day together, all of a sudden she got kind of nervous. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And she felt it, and she thought, oh, wow, it's really soft. She's like, I always wanted to know what black hair felt like. And but I was afraid to ask. I didn't want to offend anybody. And I wasn't offended. I felt like, at that point I had really done my job, because I was honored that she felt comfortable enough to ask me. And I think that that's really what we need to be doing as a culture, is to stop shaming and stop making people feel bad for being curious, to open up that conversation and the dialogue about race, and to offer the safe, non-judgmental place to talk about these things. And if we can start with hair, then it leads to the other real issues, the other deeper, seemingly more important issues. So I thank you so much for your attention today. The floor is open for questions. I hope we can have a discussion now, just briefly about this. And if you didn't get a bookmark, please pick one up. All of my information is on there, and I'd love to continue the discussion online. Thank you for your time.
Interesting how when somebody starts chemo, or they're told that they're going to start chemo, that the first thing they think about is, my hair. I mean, our hair is so important to our identity, whether we're happy with it or we're not, but all of a sudden when we're going to lose it, we really want to.
It's a big issue. And Gail, the first audio clip, the blonde woman talking about segregation, mentioned that she's served so many of her clients have gone through that, and she calls it chemo curl, because when it comes back a different texture. Wow. Yeah, it's a very serious. Thank you for handing those out. It's very serious. Go ahead. Either one.
Are you continuing your research into hair? Because I've noticed a lot of African American women now are getting blonde hair, and I'm wondering if you've interviewed anybody who's doing that.
Yes, a lot of times those are wigs. They're not actually processing their hair, because it is usually so damaging. And you can tell a lot of times if somebody is going blonde and with a natural black, especially with the compromised fragility of black hair, dealing with that kind of processing is pretty intense. But yeah, I definitely see a lot of it on the road. But a lot of times I look at it and I say, oh, it's a wig. It's not real. Go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, first of all, this is spectacular.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And it's interesting. I just heard from someone about a presentation where there was one woman who was bald by choice. And she said, well, nobody ever talks about the bald women and the choice about not to have hair. And I'm wondering, well, you mentioned already chemo, but are there stylistic folks who specialize in really very, very little hair that you've interviewed?
Yeah, there was a salon in Chelsea, New York, actually. A black man, Patrick Wellington, who talked about cutting short hair. And it's, again, quite complicated. I mean, he probably had 75 steps like Dougie. And there's definitely a call for women who are, Sinead O'Connor. There's been political, reasons why people shave their heads. People were shamed into, during the war in Germany. And they were, it was an act of aggression to wear a bald head. So there's all these different methods of empowerment or all these reasons why people are shaving their head. But I was surprised watching Patrick all the time it took for him to do this short hair, and he specializes in that. So definitely it's a call for that. Thanks for the question. Crystal, you raised your hand early on. Did you?
Well, I really like this discussion about comfort levels because I went to beauty school. I went to beauty school, and I was the only person in beauty school who was white and with black hair. And nobody black wanted everybody white with their hair. And nobody was offended by it. I mean, the idea was that the black students knew, oh, hell no. And it wasn't because they were white, it's because they were ignorant of black hair.
Right.
And the white students were like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And they were afraid. So there was just kind of ignorance and fear. And you might remember at one point you asked me about getting your hair done. You were
I don't
talking about
remember.
your ability. And I said, what on earth would you ever let anyone who wasn't going to now maybe I would feel less likely to do that now after your work. But personally, I just felt that I knew so many people who were ignorant, so many white hairdressers in school who just were afraid to even get involved. We didn't have to learn it. There's a little key segment like coloring hair or doing nails that I just felt like I would be, personally, if I were black, I would never let someone else. And when I was working on my own project, I learned about the rise of the salon. It was just as this early 20th century since people let other people do their hair at all.
Wow.
So this is some of it. So I think it's just
Thanks. That's great.
The question about seeing the more black blonde wigs. In essence, there are black cultures who come up naturally with blonde
True.
hair.
True.
I think it's sort of a picture of my father over there. Where were those? In the Solomon Islands.
Wow.
So,
That's fascinating.
Our hair for black people go in from as kinky as the pencil test is to as silky as what we would say so naturally for a white woman to have. And so it's a lot of ignorance that we know that those possibilities are. And because those of us who we consider black, we've been mixed with other cultures too.
Sure.
From you check someone's DNA and find that out, so that it's really very telling, at least for me, to find women who will, particularly another black woman will tell you should straighten your hair and it's kinky. They have no knowledge. It's like they're being very ignorant of themselves and what possibilities for black women to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry, you had your hand up. In the Orthodox Jewish shop or just in general? You know, it's changing. I mean, obviously, you know, India was a huge place for this. Thank you. India was a major place. I mean, the Korean market, the Asian market for hair is also another issue. It's Indian Remy hair was, you know, it was featured actually in Good Hair, the film, where for religious reasons, so many Indian women and girls were shaving their head for their testament to God. But then on the other side, there was a huge black market where they were taking all this hair and selling it for millions of dollars. And it's a huge market. But they're finding, even within the Orthodox Jewish salon at Shuli Wigs, you know, she's got hair from South America. She's got hair from, actually, the preferred hair in her shop is Russian. So even though there's, you know, a lot of the media attention has been on Indian Remy and on, you know, Asian hair, but really it's It's global. It really is global. Well, that's the market who's actually distributing a lot of hair products for Black culture, and that's the shameful thing with a history like Madam C.J. Walker, who started her business and was empowered by that in so many ways at that time, and then today here, it's I am not going to guess on the percentage, but it's a small percent. I mean, it's maybe 10%, if that, of the market might be controlled by Blacks, and the rest of it, the majority, is a Korean market. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just hair, a piece of hair trigger. Jennifer Aniston is known for the straight black hair is actually her great.
So, folks, this was the presentation, which I got on Library of Congress website, and it is very interesting. I also saw with you because hair, fashion, and all is my forte. My mom was a very well dressed person. She used to do a bun, and she was very, very stylish. And she taught me, So when I was young, my mom used to take me to a shop in my hometown, Aligarh, which was called Jolly. And then I started, when I grew up little older, I used to go to Habib's in New Delhi. So I would travel from Aligarh to New Delhi to Habib's, and Habib's was the one who gave Big B Amitabh Bachchan, the great Bollywood star in Diwar, that hairstyle. So I just love that. So I was seeing that what innovation should I bring to my radio and TV show. So I said, this is a very good movie at Library of Congress, and from time to time you will see some nice movies here. So, and folks, please buy my two books, and these two books bring food to the table, and also this show will be syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. So if you give me sponsorship, your product will be syndicated to 300 million listeners. So having said that, folks, now I will say cheers and bye bye, and see you in next episode of Dr. Afshan Hashmi's doco series. Bye bye.